Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sharpening Report. I am your host, Josh Peck, and I am glad to be talking with you again today. And it looks like we're going to be able to continue doing this regularly. I know the Sharpening Report's kind of been a little weird the past few months. It's kind of been where I could only post one episode every 3 months if I was lucky. But it looks like that's not going to be the case anymore. I'm really pushing to do this once a week, hopefully for Wednesday nights. That's what we're planning on right now, Wednesday nights. And I know this past week or two you've gotten 3 episodes, this being the 3rd. So I'm really trying to ramp up content. I say we because Zach Drew and I from IGBY Ministries, he's the host of the Zach Drew Show, he and I are partnering on an LLC called, Daily Renegade, of course. And we want to make regular content for you guys. So he's going to be starting a show, and I got another one too. And we have some other plans. But I'm going to get into that later. For right now, the big question is, why do UFOs appear when Israel is attacked? Now, a recent report, for those of you not familiar, there was a recent report that was just released showing that during World War II, in light of a UFO report coming from a member of the military, Winston Churchill actually called for this to be suppressed and kept secret. And it was because he was afraid that a global panic would ensue and that people would lose their faith in the church. But is this what would really happen? We hear this a lot. There would be panic everywhere, and especially people of faith, they would lose their faith if UFOs are real or if aliens are real. Can the broad possibility of extraterrestrial life in the cosmos and faith in the Word of God actually coexist? That's what I want to talk about today. I want to start off with that. And then a little later, I want to talk about this whole phenomenon of UFO appearances and big events in Israel, because there's some huge developments with those, and they are tied together a lot more than you might think. So let's get started. Anyone who has done a substantial study of official disclosure has come across the religious aspect. How would religious institutions react to either an official disclosure event or a genuine extraterrestrial presence as a whole? And in fact, it's been hypothesized that this is a major reason that our government seems to be hiding information from us. Fear of widespread panic and hysteria, especially among religious groups. That was the case with Winston Churchill in the stuff that was released. There have been several attempts to gauge what the reaction would be among religious Americans. The earliest formal effort was in the Alexander UFO Religious Crisis Survey, or AWFWORKS, and that was in 1994. So the purpose of this survey was to find an answer to a seemingly simple yet extremely important question. Would disclosure of U.S. government contact with aliens really precipitate a religious crisis that would threaten the continuity of government and even our civilization? To seek an answer, a mail survey of Protestant, Catholic, and Jewish clergy was conducted in order to discover their informed opinion. Now, as popular as this survey became in the UFO community, the math and the percentages really speak to its legitimacy or lack thereof. By the survey's own calculations and sources, at most, only 0.27% of the U.S. population was accounted for in the survey. And this actually only accounts for 1 in 374 people in the one in 374 people in the United States, and is roughly the equivalent of taking. Here's a better way to look at it. This is roughly the equivalent of taking 2 random students out of an average American high school and expecting only their views to represent the views of the rest of the students. So, or you have a group of 374 just random people, you take 1 out of there and expect that person's views to represent that entire large group. So simply speaking, the survey does not cover what is needed to fairly assess how religious people would react to a genuine extraterrestrial reality. Now, this is especially shown when it was found that only 34% of religious people in the survey thought that the reality of ET would cause a crisis in religion, whereas 69% of non-religious people believed a crisis would occur with religious people. So if anything, the only thing that the study shows is that non-religious people do not understand religious people as much as they think they do. And as it turns out, in the case of extraterrestrials, this has been the case for quite some time. So that's why we can't really take these studies with too much weight. And that, again, I brought that up because that's one that's cited frequently, and it just doesn't hold water. So, one might wonder, and by the way, if you want more information on all this, because there's a lot more about that survey and about what we're talking about tonight, I wrote a book with Derek Gilbert, and it's called The Day the Earth Stands Still, and you can find more information in there. You can check it out. Just search The Day the Earth Stands Still, Derek Gilbert, Josh Peck, you'll find it. Now, one might wonder how we got here. How did evangelical Christianity and theological conservatism get to the point at which it is generally opposed to the idea of life on other worlds? And I'm not just talking about the UFO reports and alien abduction reports that are happening. I'm not talking about that. Just the broad question, is it possible that life could exist on other planets somewhere out in the universe? Could God have created life elsewhere? Well, surprisingly, the reluctance for many Christians to accept the possibility, it hasn't actually always been that way. In fact, not too long ago, a belief in the possibility of extraterrestrial life was commonly accepted among Christians and other religious circles. So what changed? Well, with Christians, there's a long progression, but one of the main things in more recent history was Thomas Paine in 1793. He argued that astronomical science made it impossible for any thinking person to accept the general Christian notions of a divine incarnation and redeemer, and he wrote about this in his book, Age of Reason. So through his history of confronting Christianity's belief in extraterrestrial life at that time, Paine became a deist. So at that time, many more Christians were open to the idea of extraterrestrial life. It was a majority view that not necessarily that they might be visiting us or that they were good or bad or any of those deeper questions, just the topic, is there life out there? Most Christians believed that there probably was. And again, many things changed this, but one of the big ones was Thomas Paine. So Thomas Paine, in his own words, he wrote this, and again, this is from Age of Reason. He wrote, From whence could arise the strange conceit that the Almighty should come to die in our world because they say one man and one woman had eaten an apple? And on the other hand, are we to suppose that every world in the boundless creation had an Eve, an apple, a serpent, and a Redeemer? The Son of God would have nothing else to do than to travel from world to world in an endless succession of death with scarcely a momentary interval of life. Now, this shows what that survey showed. Non-Christians don't really understand Christians. Non-religious people typically don't take the time to understand what Christians actually believe and what the Bible actually says. So while this argument actually holds no real weight whatsoever, and we're going to get into why, and it actually proves, again, a profound misunderstanding of the Christian faith. At the time, it was convincing to some. It was convincing to many at that time, and even today, unfortunately, this is one of the main arguments that Christians have adopted to argue against the possibility of extraterrestrials. And again, and how many times have you heard it? A Christian, will say, I don't believe there's life on other planets because what about salvation? Jesus would, is there an alien Jesus and he died on an alien cross on an alien planet? That's an argument from Thomas Paine, who was basically poking fun at Christianity, yet somehow we Christians have adopted it, this argument. And again, this is an argument that originated from someone who is totally hostile to Christianity. We should abandon this argument altogether. And I'm not saying you have to believe in aliens at all, but if you don't, this is a bad argument. And we'll get into why. But the belief of the possibility of extraterrestrial life continued through the late 19th and 20th centuries in the church. However, it soon turned into the threat that many Christians see it as today. So with the advent of Darwinism, scientists began to be viewed as antagonistic by Christians who accepted the Bible's claims of a divine creator. The church became increasingly hostile to the idea of intelligent life on other planets. Once Darwinists, again, this is an argument from them, once Darwinists concluded that the discovery of extraterrestrial life would add support for naturalistic evolution against the idea of a creator. It doesn't, but that's what they said. And again, while this claim is just totally untrue and the discovery of life on other planets would not at all refute the Bible or support Darwinian evolution, this is what led to where we are today. So a lot of Christians, they heard that as an argument, they thought it was a good argument, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, well, then I don't believe in aliens then if it supports aliens on another planet. But when we really dig into it, we're going to see that, that argument really holds no water. They could find aliens on the moon today, and it would do nothing to support evolution, and it would do nothing to refute the biblical creator. And again, we'll get into why in just a moment, but before we move on, I wanted to fill you guys on something a bit more close to home, something I mentioned at the top of the program. Now, I've always been passionate about bringing truth to the forefront, and now more than ever, our Christian community needs a platform to discuss these pressing issues openly. There's no denying that we live in a time when censorship quickly has become the norm. We've all seen it, voices silenced and crucial topics skirted around, especially when they blend biblical truths with politics or current events. But what if we could actually change that narrative? If not for the world, at least in our community here that we hold dear. And by community, I don't even mean I mean our community here online, you and me and everybody watching. So I mentioned before, I'm teaming up with my good friend Zach Drew. Many of you might remember him from the Jim Bakker Show. Zach's heart for the Lord and the gospel is immense, yet despite his dedication, the limitations of working within a 501c3 for the Zach Drew Show, it's restricted the breadth of his message. Biblical truths and political events are directly relevant to our faith, and we're compelled to avoid discussing these things. And this is by other Christians. This is by Christians within the 501c3 construct. That's where our vision for Daily Renegade comes in. Now, Daily Renegade, it's not just another video streaming service. It's really a movement. It's a subscription-based video streaming platform combined with a vibrant social media community. So imagine being a part of a space where there's absolute freedom to discuss the Bible, politics, and current events without the looming shadow of censorship. And you get one place for everything. So you don't have to do YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, and you don't have to do all these. All of it is in one place. And again, without censorship. Our dream is for Daily Renegade to host shows such as The Sharpening Report, which you're watching now, the Zach Drew podcast, which is going to be a new thing we'll be launching, Peck Perspective, which is a show that I've been doing for the Paul Revere Report, but we want to switch it over, and even more enlightening content in the future. So this is more than just entertainment. It's an opportunity for growth, connection, and really spiritual edification, which I think we all need a lot more than we're able to get with our online communities. Because many of you say you can't talk about this stuff in your home church, so you have to go online or you have to go to conferences. Well, conferences can be expensive, and they're great, but they're expensive and they only happen a couple times a year. You need something that you can go anytime you need it. And that's what we're trying to make for everybody, for all of you, for us, and so we can all have access to that. So one feature that we're really thrilled about is the Renegade Report, and this will be a continually updated newsletter that's seamlessly integrated into Daily Renegade, right into the website. Plus, our envisioned community space will function like a blend of Facebook and Telegram, allowing all members to post, comment, and truly connect with each other and with us. Also, our videos will come with downloadable PDFs that include the show notes for that episode, including content we just could not fit into the show. But dreams and goals are great, and especially ones of this magnitude, but they require support. So to ensure that we offer the best experience and that this venture stands the test of time, Zach and I need to raise $25,000, and this amount will cover the essential web development costs, marketing, app creation. We are getting apps. We're getting phone apps for iOS and Android, and we're getting a TV app for Roku. We want to develop all that, and vital equipment for our brand new shows. So Zach and I have been blessed with the trust of many within the Christian media company. We are very familiar with Christian media. This is our bread and butter. We know the space. We know the good in it, and we know areas that definitely need to be improved. And we want to bring all of that in. We deeply believe that, and also we both have years and years and years of trust built into that community. So we deeply believe that Daily Renegade is our most effective way to serve Jesus Christ and the church in this age, in these end times that we're living in right now. And this is our chance together to reclaim our voice in a world where it's increasingly under threat. So if you feel led, and pray about it, but if you feel led, please support this endeavor at givesendgo.com/dailyrenegade. And even if you cannot contribute financially, your prayers for this project are invaluable. With faith and unity, we can pave the way for a brighter, uncensored future in Christian media. So that link again is givesendgo.com/dailyrenegade, and you can find it in the description of this video below. All right, so with that, let's continue to the question of the incarnation and redemption. So, again, just to kind of recap from before, the two major reasons that Christians today do not accept, many Christians do not accept the possibility of extraterrestrial life is the supposed problems of evolution and the incarnation. And I'm not bashing anybody. I too was convinced by these arguments years ago, so I'm not bashing anybody for that. On the surface, they do seem like they do seem like good arguments, but I want to show why they're actually not. So the evolution, and by the way, again, I'm not trying to win anybody over to the extraterrestrial side. I'm kind of on the fence on it. I'll say this: it would not surprise me if we're alone in the universe. Wouldn't surprise me at all. It also would not surprise me, even though this would be fascinating, it would not surprise me if there is life out there. Either case does nothing to my faith. It does nothing to either way. I can see the glory of God in it. Either way that it would pan out. So right now I'm kind of in the I don't know camp, but I'm open to both possibilities. So I'm not trying to win anybody over or convince anybody. I'm just trying to show that these are not good arguments to use if you don't believe. So the evolution claim is simple to refute. If evidence of life on Earth isn't enough to cause a crisis of faith in Christians and send them running into the arms of Darwinism, then neither would proof of life on another planet. It's really just cut and dry. It's that simple. Christians would just say, the Christians that already aren't convinced by Darwinism and haven't abandoned their faith for it, they would just say, well, I guess God created life there too. No problem. And that's really it. I mean, that's just why it's not a very good argument, because if it was, it would be true regardless how many planets are out there, even if Earth is the only one. And so far, I mean, there's always people that lose their faith for a variety of reasons, but true Christians that are really dedicated to their faith, they don't, the Darwin stuff just, there's lots of Christians that believe in evolution, and they still have faith in Jesus, and they believe that God just uses that as his process of creation. Do I believe that? No. But I'm not going to say that somebody's not saved if they don't believe, or if they believe that. So that already is just, it's just a really bad argument. So let's talk about the supposed threat to the incarnation and redemption. Now, the argument usually sounds roughly the same regardless of who it's coming from. Basically, it asks, if there is life on other planets, wouldn't Jesus have to be born on all those planets as an alien in order to offer the aliens redemption like he did with humans. And we know that's not possible because it says he died once. So therefore, there can't be aliens. Well, hold up. The whole argument really revolves around redemption here. Now, if there is no need for redemption, there's no need for an incarnation, right? However, if redemption is needed, then the Bible does not describe a process by which it is granted to non-human entities. So, for example, angels who have sinned against God are not granted forgiveness or redemption of any kind. On the other end of the spectrum, there is nothing to suggest that animals are in need of redemption or forgiveness at all. So what evidence is there that extraterrestrials would be in need of similar forgiveness and redemption as human beings, as we human beings do? So this usually comes up because Romans 8 and Revelation 21 and 22 tells us that the atonement of Christ ultimately extends throughout the entire universe. So, excuse me. So Scripture teaches that everything will be recreated to be like Eden before the fall of man. It would stand to reason that extraterrestrial life, whether intelligent or not, if it exists, would be included in this similar to animals. Yet the Bible makes no mention one way or another. Now, I want to make mention here that, again, I am only looking at the extraterrestrial question generally as a whole. I'm not talking about modern-day UFO reports or abduction scenarios. I'm not talking about the Greys and how they abduct and abuse human beings. You know, that, in my opinion, is demonic. I think that's fallen angel, demonic stuff, and I don't think that has anything to do with extraterrestrial life. I think they're posers, basically. They're posing as aliens, so that doesn't have anything to do with it. So, you know, again, the modern UFO phenomenon and the alien abduction reports especially, I would agree that those are demonic. So for this, we're just looking at the broad question: could alien life exist out there in the cosmos without directly contradicting the Bible? Now, while it's true, the New Testament teaches that all creation will be redeemed, it is an assumption to say that all of the universe needs to be redeemed from moral guilt, wrongdoing, or sin outside of humanity. The Bible doesn't say our intelligence or spirituality is why we are morally guilty before God and in need of redemption. It is not because we are intelligent, sentient, self-aware, conscious beings. We are in a state of needed redemption because God applies Adam's guilt to all humans. So salvation, in a biblical sense, cannot be earned, and it is never deserved. It is a gift to us by God through Jesus if we choose to accept it. So, if God did not apply moral guilt to extraterrestrials, then there is no indication he did if they exist. Well, okay, if he didn't apply moral guilt to extraterrestrials, and there is no indication he did if they exist, then the redemption objection is rendered illogical. Extraterrestrial life, again, if it exists, is likely of no concern when it comes to God's redemptive plan. So similar to animals not needing a savior, there's no indication that extraterrestrials would either. So the point of the redemption of all creation, humans excluded, is not to undo a sinful nature or a moral guilt issue. That's a human thing. So remember, animals themselves can be very violent to the point of ripping each other apart, even ripping human beings apart, but even we do not ascribe moral guilt to them in the way that we would a human. We don't ascribe a type of moral guilt. Yet we know, it's just that's animals, that's what they do. Yet we know that this is a part of the curse, and there will be a time when Jesus restores everything and animals will not be violent anymore. Same with natural disasters. We do not ascribe a moral guilt to the earth itself for that, but it's still part of the curse. The earth and the animals are not guilty in a moral sense the way that we are. So the point is to make creation what it once was in Eden and set it in a right relationship with God. Now, human beings are different, and it's because of the image of God, because many of you might be thinking, yeah, but we're not animals, we're conscious, we're sentient, we're thinking, we know right from wrong. So let's, and really what this boils down to is that we are made in the image of God. So let's get into this. So when the term image of God is properly defined, it shows from the understanding that intelligent alien life would not have been created in the image of God, that Christianity actually could sustain an extraterrestrial reality quite easily. Humanity would still maintain the uniqueness of being created in the image of God because extraterrestrial life, if it exists, would be excluded from that. The Bible gives us a clear description of the image of God in the book of Genesis. So we're going to read Genesis 1:26 through 28 from the ESV. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. And he blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." Now notice there's the creation of man, and then there's a lot of responsibilities. There's responsibilities attached to that. Now, it's been, and we'll get to that in just a second, but it's been really common, and has been for centuries, to define the image of God as something to do with intelligence, or the ability to communicate, or the possession of a spirit and or soul, the presence of a conscience, the ability to express free will, or the capacity for abstract thought, or some combination of these attributes and others. But through biblical clarification, the image of God is none of these. And actually, there's a really easy way to prove this for those who are pro-life out there. The fetus in the womb, we would say that is a living being. That's a living human being, different from the mother, right? And pretty much any Christian that takes the Bible seriously is going to believe that. Well, think about that fetus. That fetus does not have the ability to communicate yet. It doesn't have an intelligence yet. I would say that it has the possession of a spirit and soul at least, but it doesn't have the presence of a conscience, doesn't exercise free will. Well, as much as, because it can't really think yet, it doesn't have the capacity for abstract thought. But we would still say that right even at conception, that is made in the image of God. That person is made in the image of God. So that right there really proves that the image of God can't be any of these things. It can't be qualified by any of these things. Otherwise, we would have to be pro-choice, right? So like I said, biblical clarification, through that, the image of God, it's not any of these attributes. And the reason for this is that the image of God is what makes mankind distinguishably unique in relation to any other created thing in the universe. Okay? A really great resource for this is The Unseen Realm by Dr. Michael Heiser. And in that book, he explains the image of God from a theological and biblical perspective. So from the book of Genesis, and using the term divine image bearing, like you bear the image of God, and that's been something divinely put on you, Dr. Heiser lists descriptions of the image of God. So first, both men and women are included. Next, divine image bearing is what makes humankind distinct from the rest of earthly creation, and we could even extend that to universal creation if there are alien beings out there. So i.e., plants and animals, that kind of thing. The text of Genesis 1:26 does not inform us that divine image bearing makes us distinct from heavenly beings, those sons of God who were already in existence at the time of creation. The plurals in Genesis 1:26, let us create, mean that in some way we share something with them when it comes to bearing God's image. There is something about the image that makes humankind like God in some way. There is nothing in the text to suggest that the image has been or can be bestowed incrementally or partially. You're either created as God's image bearer or you are not. One cannot speak of being partly or potentially bearing God's image. This tells us that the image of God must be something possessed in its entirety by every human being, regardless of physical or mental development. Okay, so if we think of humankind as image bearers, rather than the image being an attribute of humankind, then these things begin to make more sense. So humans are representations of God on earth. We are to represent Him on earth and take care of it in the way that He would if He were there. That's why all of those responsibilities are on mankind. This is why murder is such a grave offense. When somebody kills another human being, he is essentially killing God in effigy, as Dr. Michael Heiser would say. The image is what humans are, not what humans have. So this is why extraterrestrials, if they exist, would not be considered as being created in the image of God. They aren't human. They weren't put in charge of the earth the way that humans are. God only tasked humans with being His representatives on earth. So extraterrestrials would not be made in the image of God. So purely by status, not considering intelligence or ability, and as far as we can discern from the biblical descriptions of humanity's uniqueness, extraterrestrials would likely be grouped closer to animals in the sense of not playing a central or even a major role in God's plan for redemption. So, taking all of this into account, there is no real problem with the idea of extraterrestrial life from biblical descriptions of creation, humanity, and God's redemptive plan. The supposed problems brought up from people like Thomas Paine, they're merely contrived and hold no real weight against Scripture. So at its heart, using the Bible to either support or deny the existence of extraterrestrial life, it's just an argument made purely from silence. So it's a good thing that we start thinking about these things now, because we do not know when, if ever, but we don't know when. I think it's coming. But an official disclosure event will happen. I fully believe that. We're kind of in the slow drip of disclosure now, which began in 2017. I'm definitely going to talk about that a lot in a minute. But we don't know when, say, UFOs are going to show up all over the place, or the government really admits something. We don't know if it'll be that kind of fantastic event as a UFO landing on the White House lawn, or if it's something more mundane like leaked documents or the U.S. government finally admitting what they know. But for Christians, whether we agree on the extraterrestrial question is not nearly as important as what we have in common. We all accept Jesus Christ as our Savior. We all have a promise of redemption. When this physical life is finished, we will all spend eternity together. At that time and on that side of eternity, I'm willing to bet that all of the issues that we are so opinionated about and hold so dear now will seem just totally small, weak, and really pathetic, to the point that we'll wonder what in the world we were thinking by allowing those matters to divide us. So let's not wait until eternity to realize that. Now, I want to talk more about UFOs, prophecy, in Israel, but before I do, I want to let you in on something. And this is going to be a topic of next week too. But if you've tuned into my YouTube shows or anything Daily Renegade related, or even just read the signs of our times, then you know that we live in a season of undeniable economic instability. It is rough. We're all feeling it. Now, while I firmly believe in the promises of the Lord, I also recognize the importance of being responsible stewards of the resources that He has blessed us with. Now, in Revelation 6, the Black Horse prophecy speaks of times when economic hardships will be absolutely rampant. And while some may see the troubling economic indicators today as only coincidence, they are actually potential birth pangs, heralding this more significant Black Horse crisis. Now, I totally believe in the pre-trib rapture, and if you don't, that is totally fine. I'm so glad you're here. We love you, and this is something that I don't ever fight about. And people here at Daily Renegade don't fight about it either. So if you're mid, pre-wrath, post, that is totally fine. We're all Christians. We all love each other. But I do believe in the pre-trib rapture. But let's not forget, I do not use that as an excuse that we shouldn't be prepared. I'm not one of these, well, I'm not gonna get any like survival food or anything in case the grid goes down because, you know, my hope is in the Lord's promise that we're gonna be out of here before then. Well, let's not forget, let's pump the brakes here. Let's not forget that believers, Christians, still lived through the Great Depression. No rapture saved them from those trying times. There have always been famines, and there have always been times of plenty. And that there's no saying that that's going to go away. So we do need to be prepared. We are in an economic downfall right now, and we need to protect what God has blessed us with. We need to be good stewards with what we have. We need to store up for the drought, for the famine. So our responsibility is not only to await Christ's return, but to wisely safeguard God's provisions for ourselves and for our children and grandchildren while we are still here, because we do not know when He's returning. So this brings me to a significant point about our current financial system: currency versus real money. Now, while widely used, our dollar is just a currency subject to inflation and the whims of global markets. It's easily manipulated. It's not real money in the way that God-given silver is, you know, things that God gave us. So to illustrate, if you kept $1,000 in cash since the late 1960s, say you took $1,000, you put it under your bed, now inflation would have eroded its purchasing power drastically. You would have $1,000 today, but you won't be able to buy as much with that $1,000 today than you could have back in 1960. Now, here's the difference. If you had invested that $1,000 in silver in the 1960s during that same period, if you said, okay, I got my stack of $100 bills here, I'm going to go buy some silver, and you put that under your bed or in a safe or wherever, today that would be worth $28,000. Amazing. So it retains the purchasing power of the time that it's in. Now, this is the power and stability of actual assets like silver, our God-given precious metals. God gave us this stuff for a reason. God didn't necessarily give us dollar bills, but He gave us silver. He gave us gold. And, you know, there's some issues. There's still some issues with gold, just with markets and things. So for me, I think, I mean, you can by all means go for gold, but I think silver is, for me, just a little bit more safe and stable. Not anything to do with the metal itself. It's just there's been times in the past where the government has confiscated gold, and it's been a whole ordeal. But there's a protection on silver. Anyway, so how can we make a wise choice in these uncertain times? Well, we can do that by converting your savings, your retirement funds, 401ks, anything that you have saved, your assets, into silver. And there's even a discreet way that if you want, you can get this metal shipped to your doorstep, or you can have it protected in a secure facility provided by the same people supplying you with the silver. And more fascinating is that many don't realize they can convert their IRAs or 401ks into physical silver, and that totally avoids the pitfalls of this volatile fiat system that is vulnerable to hyperinflation and is getting worse by the day. Now, of all the choices available, there's really only one company that I've entrusted with my personal investments in this regard, And it is our brothers and sisters in Christ. This is a Christian-led place, the Christian-led Cornerstone Asset Metals. Now, I've experienced their integrity and expertise firsthand throughout the years. And I believe that when the storms hit our economy, those of us who chose to invest in silver through our Christian brothers and sisters at Cornerstone will stand firm. They treat this as a ministry. While technically on paper, yeah, it's a business, but they treat this as a ministry. They are here for the church. They are here for you. They're here for me. They know what's coming. Next week, if Lord willing, if all goes well, we're going to have the guy that runs this whole thing, Terry Saka of Cornerstone, and he is not only is he a legitimate financial expert, AAMS, but he's also, I mean, he is just like a prophetic, like super sleuth. He really understands the Bible well, and he's going to come on and if all goes to plan next week, he's going to come on and talk to us about what's going on in Israel, how it's going to impact our economy, prophetically what's going on with our economy and the world economy, the times that we're living in now, and what we can do to protect what we have against it. Because the economy is collapsing. It's really, we're in really bad shape, and anything that you have, you would be wise to invest in something stable such as silver. So for your sake and for your family's sake, I urge you to visit cornerstoneassetmetals.com. Again, I have worked with these guys for years. They are top notch, and this is why I do not endorse a whole lot of things on this channel. I do get a lot of offers. I do get a lot of people saying, hey, will you promote this product on your show? I get that a lot, and I say no to 99% of them. Because, for one thing, I need a few years to be with a company and work with them to see how they are before I'm going to subject you guys to it. Because if I don't, what if they're scammers? I can't do that to you guys, and I don't want to do it to myself. But, I feel that the Lord has put a responsibility on me towards you guys. And I need to know, at least as best as I can, that the people I'm suggesting, or the companies that I suggest, or the ministries that I suggest are trustworthy. So that's why I don't promote a whole lot of companies or even other ministries or anything like that on the show, outside of like interviewing somebody for a book or something. But when it comes to something this heavy, I just don't do it. But with Cornerstone Asset Metals, I have been working with them for years. If there were any red flags, I firmly believe they would have come up by now. They are really good brothers and sisters in Christ. They have taken care of me really well when I invest with them. And by the way, we've even worked together so closely that if they wanted to, they could have ripped me off pretty easily. And they are just not that, like, at all. I can't say the same for every other gold and silver company out there because I don't know. This is one I can say for as absolutely sure as I can possibly be on this side of eternity. They are legit. They are absolutely the real thing, and they will treat you right. CornerstoneAssetMetals.com. Click on the link in the description below this video, and you can request your free silver report. So there's no, there's no, you don't have to promise to do anything right away. Just get a free silver report. They're not going to be pushy with you. They're going to talk with you, and they're going to see like what your needs are. They'll help you. And also, please remember to tell them that Josh Peck sent you. This actually does help out a lot because it tells them who of my audience they have, and where people just come in just kind of out of nowhere. They really do prefer to work with Christians because they can better help Christians because they are Christians, So tell them that Josh Peck from Daily Renegade sent you. If you're doing it online, there's a little space, a drop-down menu that you can click on that. That does help out a lot because we do work closely together. And that does help me out too. So their financial experts are ready to guide you, and they're not pushy. I promise. These are brothers in Christ. They're not going to push you or anything, but they're ready to guide you on the best protective measures for your savings in these turbulent times. They are truly providing a ministry effort here in these prophetic times of economic collapse. So once again, Cornerstone Asset Metals. Check the link below and tell them Josh Peck sent you. Let's be wise, prepared, and above all, trust in the Lord while being responsible stewards of the treasures He has granted us. Okay. let's get into the Israel and UFO connection. What the title of this sharpening report is based on. So now that we have all the background information, we have all the context now. What is going on with UFO sightings and major events in Israel? So, speaking of UFOs and what's happening right now in Israel, I want to talk about this strange connection and a loose prediction. I want to give a loose prediction, and this is not something that a voice from God told me or any. This is not that. This is just based on other things that I've researched and I've written about in the past, and making a loose prediction for the future on what we might expect in the coming days. So, back in 2017, a couple of months before two striking yet seemingly on the surface unconnected events happened within the span of 6 days. The release of the New York Times article that exposed the Tic Tac UFO and others to the world, and President Trump declaring Jerusalem as Israel's capital and promising to move the U.S. embassy there. Both big news. Doesn't seem like they're connected, but these happened 6 days apart. Well, just a couple of months before those two, I had written about a strange connection between UFOs and Israel. And I want to read that for you here. This is just an excerpt, so it's not the entire chapter or anything. Again, this is from the book, The Day the Earth Stands Still. And keep in mind, I wrote this, and it was published right before these two events happened. I believe it was published, and you can look this up. It was published in November 2017, and these things happened mid-December 2017. I didn't have any inside knowledge that either of these things were going to happen. I just followed the pattern and made a loose prediction. And I was even really careful in the book, too, because I was saying, hey, nothing might happen. But, so this isn't like, I wasn't given a prophecy or anything. This wasn't something I felt in the spirit, nothing like that. This was following a pattern that you can follow at home, and I'm going to teach it to you. But, so I wrote about this, and it was published right before these two things happened. So I'm bringing this up because now we see major events in Israel, and for reasons that I'll lay out here, I believe we're going to see some more major news in terms of UFOs and official disclosure and all of that stuff. In fact, it probably is no coincidence that there was that major UFO, or now they call them UAP, but that major UAP congressional hearing not that long ago, and then shortly after we now have this war in Israel. I'm telling you, I know it sounds crazy, but these two things are connected. And you might ask, why are they connected? Well, it's because the Bible is true. Because think about it, if these UFOs were just aliens, why would they care anything about coordinating what they do based on what Israel does? If we went to, say we discovered life on Mars, say it's like an underground civilization on Mars, and there's different countries and everything underground, would we pick one of the smallest ones we could find, one of those small countries, and then whatever that country decided to do, the Flubnorf, the country is attacking Gemtot. We need to fly our ships over there right now. We need to just appear for a while. It's ridiculous, right? It's absolutely ridiculous. Why do UFOs and Israel, major events in Israel, why do these coordinate? It's because the Bible's true. It's because the UFO thing is demonic, and it's because Israel is the central hub of everything prophetic in the Bible. That's why they're attracted to this. That's why when Jesus came the first time, demons everywhere, right? People were getting possessed left and right. Everybody was getting sick. It's like moth to the flame. They are attracted to this stuff. So now we're seeing this UFO stuff like really ramping up. And it started in 2017. So I'm gonna tell you this correlation here. I'm going to show you this connection, and it's something you can follow at home, and you can keep up with. So I'll tell you what I mean with all of this. So here's an excerpt from the book that I wrote with Derek Gilbert. It's called "The Day the Earth Stands Still." Go check it out. So what I'm going to read, and I'll jump in here and there with my own words, but this is an excerpt straight from the book. There seems to be something strange looming between the years 2017, 2018, and possibly in the years following. One piece of this puzzle came when I was reading the extraordinary book, What Dwells Beyond, the Bible Believer's Handbook to Understanding Life in the Universe by the amazingly talented biblical researcher Jeffrey W. Martis. In Chapter 2, Martis makes an interesting connection. He shows how certain significant events in Israel's history seem to correspond to events reigniting the idea of alien life elsewhere in the universe. For example, in 600 BC approximately, Nebuchadnezzar burned Jerusalem to the ground. At this same time, a curious belief called cosmic pluralism began. Cosmic pluralism is a term used to describe the existence of more than one planet, usually hundreds or millions of planets populated with intelligent life. In AD 70, Rome burned Jerusalem to the ground. In the same year, the famous philosopher Plutarch wrote in his De Facie in Orbe Lunae, or On the Face of the Moon, quote, "The men on the moon, if they do exist, are slight of body and capable of being nourished," end quote. What makes this quote so important is that Plutarch was the last major philosopher to seriously comment on cosmic pluralism before it was revived in the Middle Ages. There was a third major connection between cosmic plurality and significant events in Israel. Modern ufology and the rise of aliens in the public mind began in 1947 with the UFO crash in Roswell, New Mexico. 1 year later, in 1948, Israel became a nation again. As Martis admits in his book, this could be all coincidence. But is it? Well, connections today are stronger and more numerous. When we entered the beginning of 2017, we were reminded of a major event in Israel's history. 100 years prior, in 1917, the Balfour Declaration was written. The Balfour Declaration was a letter dated November 2nd, 1917, from Arthur James Balfour, the United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary, to Walter Rothschild, a leader of the British Jewish community, for transmission to the Zionist Federation of Great Britain and Ireland. Strangely enough, less than a month earlier, October 13th, during this same year, was the famous Fatima sighting. At the time, it was publicized as an appearance of Mary, the mother of Jesus. However, when reading through the eyewitness accounts of what would be called the miracle of the sun, it becomes apparent that this was a sighting of a UFO. Also, in 1917, during World War I, there were numerous reports of UFOs from soldiers on all battlefronts. In fact, it was even reported that German pilot Manfred Fryer, if I'm butchering that name, I apologize. He's better known as the Red Baron. But he believed he shot down a UFO over Belgium in the spring of 1917. The Balfour Declaration was actually not the first step in efforts towards establishing a home for the Jewish people. In 1897, that would be 120 years ago from 2017, the first Zionist Congress was held in Basel, Switzerland, by Theodor Herzl, the founder of the modern Zionist movement, and the Basel Declaration was submitted. It stated, quote, "Zionism seeks to establish a home for the Jewish people in Palestine secured under public law," end quote. The new program, which came to be known as the Basel Program, was adopted under the following terms. Quote, "Zionism aims at establishing for the Jewish people a publicly and legally assured home in Palestine. For the attainment of this purpose, the Congress considers the following means serviceable. 1. The promotion of the settlement of Jewish agriculturalists, artisans, and tradesmen in Palestine. 2. The federation of all Jews in local or general groups according to the laws of the various countries. 3. The strengthening of the Jewish feeling and consciousness. 4. Preparatory steps for the attainment of those governmental grants which are necessary to the achievement of the Zionist purpose." End quote. During this same year, possibly the most famous UFO incident besides Roswell occurred. The Aurora UFO incident reportedly happened on April 17th, 1897. So it's the same year. Locals claimed a UFO crashed on a farm near Aurora, Texas, and is claimed to have resulted in the death of the alien craft's pilot. and the pilot's body is allegedly buried in an unmarked grave in the local cemetery. There's a whole story behind that. Actually, if you want a whole sharpening report on that, let me know and we'll do it. Okay, anyway, back to the excerpt. A bit more recently, in 1977, Menachem became the Prime Minister of Israel, and in 1978 he signed the Camp David peace accords with Egyptian President Anwar Sadat. This was facilitated by President Jimmy Carter. It was a major turning point in Israel's history. Now, oddly, 1977 and 1978 were also important years in modern ufology. The government of Brazil has released declassified security files pertaining to Operation Saucer, a top-secret investigation by the Força Aérea Brasileira. I'm terrible at foreign languages, so my apologies. Into the 1977 UFO flap in the northern state of Pará. Beginning in October of 1977 and lasting through the first half of 1978, so again, the same time as the Camp David peace accords, the city of Colares in the Brazilian state of Pará underwent extreme UFO and alien activity, even to the point of being called a UFO invasion by the newspaper O Liberal. And this is now known as the Colares UFO flap. So let's recap a few of these things. So, to recap, the first attempt to make Israel a home for the Jewish people occurred 120 years ago from 2017, which is the same time as the Aurora UFO incident. 100 years ago from 2017, the Balfour Declaration was submitted, which was the same year as the Fatima sighting, which we can see as a UFO event, and also when the Red Baron believed he shot down a UFO. 70 years ago from 2017, in 1947, the UFO crash of Roswell happened, and around that same time, in 1948, Israel became a nation again. Now, adding to all this, 50 years ago from 2017 was the Six-Day War, or Third Arab-Israeli War, of 1967, in which Israel defended against an invading army of surrounding nations. Now, strangely enough, at that same time, the most intensive and long-lasting UFO sighting wave of all time occurred, and this would have been, 40 years ago from 2017. So, taking all this into account, the years, and this is back, this is my excerpt here. This is what I wrote back in, well, I was writing this probably summer of 2017. This was the last chapter, so maybe early fall, but it was before anything actually happened. So back to the excerpt. Taking all this into account, the years 2017 and 2018 seem to have a lot of significant anniversaries of Israel/UFO history converging, because, and this is me speaking, and I get into way more detail in the last chapter. I just didn't want to put it all in here because this would have been a 2-hour episode if I did. So you can get the book if you want all of the information, because there's a lot there. But just basically, each of those numbers, each of those anniversary dates, 120 years ago, 100 years ago. So we have 120, 100, 70, 50, and 40. All of these are candidates for what constitutes a generation in the Bible. So it seems all these generation cycles converge at the end of 2017, when, now looking back, most people agree that was when official disclosure actually began. And that's also when the world was set on fire with Trump's comments about Jerusalem, which finally a U.S. president actually admits it, that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, because no presidents before that were too cowardly to even admit it, even Republican ones, and that he promised to move the U.S. embassy there. Huge news for Israel. Anyway, so back to my excerpt from the book. All these facts and more seem to be pointing to the years 2017 and 2018 as a significant time in the near future. It would seem, and again, I have to emphasize, this was written before anything happened, so I didn't know. It would seem, if history repeats itself, that we might see a major event in Israel, while at the same time we will see a major event promoting the idea of cosmic plurality. What this might be, one can only speculate. Could it be a war igniting in the Middle East involving Israel? Could an official disclosure event of UFO knowledge from the government occur? Might there be another major UFO sighting or something even bigger? Perhaps it is something that will begin in 2017 or 2018 and culminate later. Well, okay, so that's the end of the excerpt I'm going to read. But again, I did not get any of that from some divine download from God speaking in my ear. And I do believe in the gifts. I do believe in prophecy. I do believe in that stuff. But this wasn't, I would say God, led me through research and stuff, but this was just research that anybody could have done. And I didn't even come up with this, the original kernel that all of this was based on. So anybody could do this. But it just shows that if you pay attention to what's going on, you can kind of get a sense of what's ahead. So I said all that, and the book was published 1 month before the New York Times, all the Pentagon Tic Tac UFO stuff came out, and 6 day apart in these events, and President Trump said everything about his support for Israel and the U.S. Embassy and Jerusalem and all of that. Those things happened 6 days apart, very close together, both extremely big deals in terms of both of their respective histories, UFO history and Israel history. So, again, that's the end of the excerpt that I want to read from you. But if you want more, and again, there is a lot more in there, you can check out the book, again, co-authored with Derek Gilbert, The Day the Earth Stands Still. So given all that, and given that what I had written turned out to be accurate, as, again, many people say it was the end of 2017, a month or two after my book was published, that official disclosure actually began. And we've been in a slow drip of it so far, ever since. So I don't think it was a coincidence that we had that big congressional hearing, a hearing in Congress over UFOs, UAPs, and it was taken seriously. The whole David Grush thing, that and then what? It wasn't that long after this war in Israel breaks out. If I would have thought of it, and I didn't at the time, it just for some reason, I don't have this constantly in my head, so it didn't occur to me. But if I would have thought about it, I could have said something at that time when that congressional thing happened. I could have put online and said, "Keep your eyes on Israel. Something's coming. Something big's coming." And I should have. I just didn't think of it at the time, but I should have. And here we are, this big war with Israel and Hamas. So, given all that, I believe it is extremely likely that we will be seeing more UFO news, and it will further push this agenda of cosmic plurality, that these, not just that there might be life out there, but that these UFOs are that life out there. It's going to push that rather than being anything dubious. And we're going to see, the more that happens, we're going to see more in Israel. The more we see in Israel, the more attacks, the more news, the more prophetic things that happen, the more we're going to see with UFO stuff. And this is another reason, because of this strange connection, it's another reason I really believe that the whole UFO question plays a major part in end times prophecy. Maybe it's the Great Delusion, I don't know, but it's going to play a part. This might be why people have such a hard time repenting when you read the book of Revelation. So, given the times that we're living in, we really need to remain informed, because time's getting short. We need the freedom to be able to discuss these things. That's why Zach and I are trying to do Daily Renegade. That's why we need your help. We want to be, we'd love to be able to just preach this to the world, to tell this stuff to the world. And I don't care if people don't have to believe in the Israel UFO connection. I just want them to turn to Jesus. However they get there, I want them to turn to Jesus, because he is the only way. This is just one bit of evidence that maybe somebody who's entrenched in ancient aliens might consider. Yeah, I've never actually thought about that. There is a connection here between Israel events and UFO events. So why on earth would UFOs have anything to do? And a lot of times the UFO stuff happens before the Israel events. So what? They can predict the future? It only makes sense. It only makes sense if these things are demonic and there's some spiritual thing happening here. There's a thinning of the veil. They can sense when something prophetic is about to happen, and they are just attracted to it. That's the only way that this makes any kind of sense. Otherwise, we're living in a totally unpredictable world, and anything's possible, and you can't rely on anything. I mean, I don't know how else to look at it. So that's why it's important. I'm not trying to convince people anything about UFOs, anything about aliens, anything about this connection. I just want people to turn to Jesus, and for some people, this might be their open door towards considering that possibility. And I like to look at every Sharpening Report episode as that. Here's another open door to somebody who might think about these things. Somebody who's interested in this kind of thing. Well, there's a prophecy for that too. I really like prophecy. I feel called towards that in everything I do. So again, for all of you out there that's watching, keep in your word. Understand the times that we are living in. And let's all be the watchmen that we're supposed to be. And let's all work together to warn the world together. Please subscribe if you haven't had a chance to already. Please share this video. I know censorship happens and you try to post a link on Facebook and they just don't let anybody see it. I know that stuff happens, but whatever you can do, send this link. If you know somebody who's really interested in like sci-fi alien stuff, nothing wrong with that. I like sci-fi too, but send them this video. It might spark something. Text this out, text this video out, send it through Messenger. There's ways that we can get the word out, but please help us, because it's been so hard to share anything that we say anymore through social media, because they just suppress everything. And that's why we desperately need Daily Renegade. We need to get this launched. We need to get this off the ground, and we're asking you to pray, consider supporting us, consider helping with us, partnering with us, really. So I've always looked at Daily Renegade as something that we all build together. It's been that in the past. That is not changing. Zach Drew sees that too. I would not partner with him if he had a different view of it. I would not partner with him if he didn't see the vision of Daily Renegade and what it is and what it can be. And so he and I are like-minded. We're aligned, and we actually have a chance now. We can actually make this happen. So again, get that link in the description below. Help us out if you can. And look, I'm not even just talking about financially here. Prayer, just prayer. That doesn't cost anything, but 10 seconds of your time. Pray for us. Pray that God's will be done. If you don't know, maybe you're thinking you don't know enough about Daily Renegade and you don't know if you want to pray for it. Well, take it to the Lord and pray that the Lord's will be done. Because if God doesn't want this to happen, I don't want it to happen either. And I was praying a lot about that. That was a big reason I made the switch from Skywatch to IGBY to Zach Drew. A big reason was because I knew, I asked God, how important is Daily Renegade? Is that a part of the equation? Because if not, I was praying this for months to God. For probably the better part of a couple of years to God. Lord, if you don't, it is so hard to do Daily Renegade and do Skywatch. I can't do both. And that's not saying anything about Skywatch, okay? I love my Skywatch family. Tom Horn and I are very close. Please keep him in prayer, by the way. He's in the hospital and he's having a really rough time. But there was no falling out or anything there, but I just asked God, if you want me all in on Skywatch, I will do it. I will get rid of Daily Renegade. I will close it down. I'll sell it, or I'll just quit doing it. I'll give it up. No problem, Lord. What do you want me to do? And I kept, for a long time, I didn't get a direct answer, but I just kept getting this nagging, not yet. Don't do anything yet. Just hold on. I just kept getting that kind of feeling. And So I did, and I did the best that I could to be obedient with that. I held on. I did what I could when I could. Uh, only posting once every 3 months or so, but so then I got a call from Zach Drew and we talked and everything, and he was looking for somebody that had my exact skill set. And before then, I had never considered leaving Skywatch, or I just never considered it because that's family, and you just don't leave family. But but I couldn't make a decision like that without praying. And there's a lot more to this story, but I had to give it prayer. I gave it prayer, a lot of prayer, and I asked God, like, Lord, you know me. I obviously believe in the gifts, but I'm careful. I can't just, if I get any little feeling one way or another, I can't just bank on that. I need this to be so incredibly obvious that this is you wanting me to do this before I do it. Otherwise, I'm not doing it. And that was just me. I need to make sure that it's God. Like, I need to. And there were many things, but one of the main things that really facilitated that was Daily Renegade. Because when I told Zach about it, told him what I wanted to do, and because I told him, part of this job, you got to know this. I've had this for years, and God's not letting me let it go for some reason. So how does that factor in with me coming and working at IGBY? And once I told him about you guys, about my amazing audience, and about what we do at Daily Renegade, and just told him the whole deal, he just absolutely fell in love with it. I mean, he loved it and wanted to support it and be a part of it, and which I'm like, oh my gosh, of course, because if I'm partnering with technically my boss, if I'm partnering with my boss on this, we can really get this done. Like, the stuff that we've been wanting to do, we can really make this a reality. So that was a big deal. That was a big factor in the decision making. Wasn't the only factor, but it was a big one. So now we are moving forward, and I've been working with Zach for about 4 months now. Everything has been great, and we're really working hard together. We got one hiccup, and it's finances. That is our main obstacle right now. So we want to hit that $25,000 goal, but again, all the reason I brought all that up was to say, if the best thing you can do in your position, not knowing me personally, not knowing Zach personally, pray that the Lord's will be done. If you already know us and you've been with us, and it just if you feel God leading you, then absolutely give financially. I mean, we really need it, but more than anything else, we need prayer. I'm not questioning Daily Renegade anymore. I fully believe that this is God's will, but I also fully understand that there are people out there who might question if it is. The best thing to do, the safest thing to do, is pray that the Lord's will be done. You cannot go wrong there, and either way, that will help us. Because what if in the case that, like, God doesn't want it to be done, then it wouldn't be, and we don't have to waste our time with it. So, I mean, I just want to go where God wants us to go. Every sign is telling me this is the one. And I fully believe one way or another, God's going to provide these funds. I know it's a lot. $25,000 is a lot. But if you think about it in the bigger picture, $25,000 to start what we're trying to start, and to be able to get everything done and ensure that we at least have 1 year of full operations where we don't have to worry about finances, and we can just focus on you guys, on edification, on the message, and on the website, making sure the website is flawless. We're totally getting rid of Wix, who we're going through now, but making sure we're going through Uscreen, so working with them, which they are awesome. They've been so helpful. They are polar opposite from Wix. We can focus on that for the whole first year, and if in that first year, if we get enough subscribers to where the subscription, the membership cost can pay the monthly fees, which are hefty, but I understand why they are what they are. A lot of that has to do with the economy. That's why Cornerstone's so important. But then it'll start paying for itself, and then we're golden, and then we're good. Then we can just ride that out till the Lord comes home, and we can just all focus on growing this community as much as possible and doing more exciting things in the future. That's what we really look forward to. That's what we're praying for. So pray for our wisdom, pray for our leadership, pray that we are on God's path and not on our own. I don't want to be on my own path. I've been on my own path before. I know what that's like. When I'm on my own path, I ruin my own life, and many of you, I'm sure, can relate. So please keep us in prayer, regardless if you can support financially or not. But if you can support financially, please do. And if you have any questions, any concerns about it, I am an open book. My email, my direct email, I will get your email, is joshpeckdisclosure@gmail.com. I am happy to answer any questions that you have. If you're considering donating and you don't know and you want to talk with me personally, and when I say talk, I mean over email, phone calls. You can't count on those with me. I'm in and out of studios all day, and email's the best way. So, but I'll be happy to talk with you. So, okay, all of that aside, I just want to the main thing, keep in your word, stay vigilant, understand the times that you're living in, pray for us that we can help people see the times that we're living in. A lot of people are blind to this stuff, and I don't fault them for it. It's just not a lot of pastors talk about this. Not a lot of churches talk about this. Many of you out there feel totally alone in your church because you're the only one that even knows the word Nephilim. And you know what we're doing is I mean that's like 101. And by the way, if you're in 101 level, we're so glad to have you. I'm not going to treat you like a baby or anything. That's great. We totally accept you wherever you are. But I know a lot of people feel secluded in their own local communities. So I want to create a place where we really can all edify each other, myself included, because I need it too. I need you guys, and as much as we all need each other. But okay, so. All that being said, I will let you go for tonight. We'll talk more next week. Lord willing, we will have Terry Saka on, and it'll be a good interview. So, thank you so much for joining me on today's Sharpening Report. I, of course, again, am your host, Josh Peck, and until next time, take care and God bless.